We have with us something very exciting. You know, Israel is well known for its Air Force, one of the top air forces in the world, competing always with the United States and sharing technology, but complete. When Israel needed to defend herself, she appealed to many pilots around the world, and many Americans, many South Africans, and many people from other places came through. And we are very fortunate to have in our 2009 someone who fought in 1948 as a young pilot who successfully made a difference in the state of Israel, which allows us indirectly to have this conference today. Playing behind us, and we'll go to sound in just a second, is a short video about him and the circumstances which brought him to Israel. His name is Lenart, and when you go to answers.com, you'll find many, many references to him, and we'll spike those statistics from this afternoon. He has been instrumental in helping the state of Israel, and I'll let you watch the rest of the video here with sound. And the circumstances which brought him to Israel. His name is Lenart, and when you go to answers.com, you'll find many, many references to him, and we'll spike those statistics from this afternoon. He has been instrumental in
of 10,000 troops only 16 miles from Tel Aviv. The Israelis' untested aircraft, armed with only 20mm cannons and 70-kilogram bombs, made history when the Egyptians, confused by the Israeli secret air force, halted their offensive. Lenart later flew for El Al, Israel's national airline, and in the 1970s and 1980s, produced the major motion pictures Iron Eagle 1 and Iron Eagle 2. In the early 1980s, Lenart was general manager of the San Diego Clippers of the National Basketball Association. He now lives in Tel Aviv and has 2 daughters. Ladies and gentlemen, World War II Marine fighter pilot, pioneer Israeli Air Force aviator, and motion picture producer, Lou Lenart.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Sharona asked me to tell you a few words of my experiences in April and May of 1948. At that time, it was Palestine becoming Israel. She also told me that I have maximum 5 minutes, which usually takes me about 30 minutes to tell the brief portion. So I'll get to it right away. I arrived in Palestine at that time, April the 1st, 1948, piloting a small single-engine 4-seat aircraft that the Haganah bought that was critically important to drop supplies to the settlements and the villages that were surrounded and under attack, and also to take out the wounded. We had nothing but a few Piper Cubs. The problem was the airplane was built and designed to fly 500 miles distance. The distance between Brindisi, Italy, where was an abandoned air base that the Haganah took over, and Tel Aviv was 1,300 miles. So I spent 11.5 hours watching that one propeller go round and round and round and round, never seeing land, never seeing a ship, never seeing another airplane, and that was a sweat. Now, you talk about the miracle of Hanukkah. The oil container in that little airplane, it's called a Norseman. We took out the 2 seats and put a big rubber tank in there with a pipe. The oil was the size of a shoebox. How that thing went 11.5 hours, I have no idea. Never been able to figure out technically, but we made it. Now, the situation at that time it was still Palestine, was about 600,000 Jews, men, women, and children, and about 200 million Arabs, very hostile around us. The balance of forces was, they had everything the British had given them. They had air forces, navy, ships, tanks, artillery. We had practically nothing. But the bottom line is we won. Now, how did we do it? First of all, the motivation, desperation is a great motivation, or the secret weapon that we had, which is called Aim Ra, which means no alternative, or the Mediterranean is a long swim. So as Ben Gurion said, we either win or we die there. We waited 2,000 some years for the States, and we're not going to give up. Well, the whole Air Force at that time was 4 little improvised airplanes bought from Czechoslovakia, made from spare parts that the German Air Force left behind. They came in parts, were hurriedly put together, and on the 29th of May, of course, Israel was attacked from all sides. All the Arab armies marched in, and they had everything. The Egyptians alone had 40 brand new Spitfires. Our total Air Force was 4 little airplanes, never been tested. We never fired the guns. We never dropped a bomb. We didn't know if it would work. But there it was. Again, Aim Ra, no alternative. There were 4 pilots available. The only reason I was the leader, because I was the only one that had fired a gun in war. I was with the Marines in the Pacific for for years. I flew about 6 years with the Marines, and I learned the war business. So I became the leader. Now, my claim to fame is my number 3 was a guy called Ezer Weitzman. And what do you do with 4 airplanes when the enemy, just the Egyptians, had 40? You try to get them on the ground. And that was the schedule on it. On the other hand, on the 29th of May, the army commander of the South, Shimon Avidan, an incredible man, he rushed to the airport. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening of the 29th. And he says, listen, 6 miles from where we are is the whole Egyptian army of 13 or 14,000 men, 800 vehicles, tanks and trucks, and we blew up the bridge. So they're parked bumper to bumper as far as I could see. If we don't stop them now, they'll be in Tel Aviv tomorrow, and that's the end of the war. Well, the decision was very easy to make. It took about less than a minute, and it had nothing to do with my mind. It had to do with my feelings. Somebody says, he followed his heart and helped save the nation. I looked around, and that's it. We're going. Now, in airplanes, even if you tune an engine, you have to test it. Nothing. We knew nothing. Another worst part about it is every day the Egyptian Air Force was bombing our air base, but it was supposed to be we were there in secret. Our luck, there were 2 hangars. There was nothing in this hangar, and the 4 airplanes were being assembled in this hangar. They always bombed that hangar. So we Goral, destiny. Anyhow, to cut to the chase, to get down to it, because I'm afraid of Sharono is going to just yank me off. Anyhow, we got in the airplanes, and I looked back and I saw the whole Air Force of the 3 guys white-faced because they were afraid. Everybody was afraid, even I. But one of the things I learned in the Marine Corps is when you're a commander, you never show fear. So 4 of us, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the hangar. I did something that's never, ever done. Because nobody's that crazy, but then we didn't have any choice. Had the hangar doors opened, started the engines in the hangar because I was afraid that while we're being towed one at a time, because we only had 1 tow truck, the Egyptian Air Force come over and wipes us out. So next thing you know, we zip out, take off, and we had no radios or anything like that. But then I didn't know for sure, because I'd only been there a few days, I knew the Egyptians were to the south, but I didn't know precisely where. And I was in a turn just after takeoff, and the guy below me, my number 2, who was killed later, he realized that I didn't quite know where I was, so he went like this. I'd straighten out, and as far as I could see, I saw the whole Egyptian army laid out in front of me. I turned back, and I saw Israel. I felt like my wings were protecting the country. I was very spiritual about those things, and I thought it was the most critical, most important moment of my life forever, and I'm forever blessed. I did a quick Shema Yisrael, even though I was not religious, turned the airplane upside down and dove right into the center of the Egyptian army. And then, of course, everything exploded. One of my bombs apparently hit the fuel tanker, which was luck. And the rest is history. I'm told that the history books say that if we would not have stopped them, they would have been in Tel Aviv the next morning. So for me, it was the most important event of my life. I feel I was born to be there at that moment in history, to be able to contribute to the survival of Israel. And I'm forever grateful and forever blessed for that.
In Israel and half of his time here in LA. My company, Step Strategy, is very happy that Lou is our senior advisor. We don't do anything without consulting with Lou. He is our key pilot.